Okay, I've just started up the recording of today's session of um, the first Saturday in December 2024. It is the first Saturday of month four in this year-long program called Islands of Sanity in a Mad World, brought to you by this little organization in the interwebs called Living Resilience. And I'm Dean Walker, guy who put that together. And we're just spending a few moments here, um, slowly starting up because I'm certainly assuming we have a couple more people showing up. We shall see. And as I just mentioned to Allison and Janet, that these hours go by very, very quickly. And so I really need to get going and people can watch the recording. So a hearty good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever people are when they are watching this. And I'm here to tell you that there are going to be some major news offerings today in both sessions. I'm quite excited about them. I'm also quite humbled by them. They're big for this work and for me and my history of offering personal growth work for decades, and then for a decade now, offering this work in service of the collapse aware and collapse acceptant communities. This is big for me, and I imagine it may show up as large scale for you as well. And I hope you also find it inspiring and I don't know, kind of like that feeling of climbing the big hill at the beginning of many roller coasters, where in anticipation of, okay, here we go. This is really happening. That's certainly what I've got going on. So enough of that. That's the introduction to this recording. And again, Allison and Janet, I so appreciate you being here and holding up the live on Zoom part of the contingent. And so uh, I'm actually going to forego us doing extensive check-ins. Perhaps just a couple of sentences, if each of us could just check in, let our voice be heard, and speak a couple few sentences of how you're doing since we saw you last. How's your body? How's your state of being? And anything else you'd like to just sum it up with for a brief check-in? Perhaps I should model that because I certainly have not been brief in the introduction to the recording. Again, I'm Dean Walker. I'm here in Ashland, Oregon. I'm very alive, as I mentioned to Allison before we started recording. That means that I have a lot going on many spots on this continuum of possible states of being and experiences that we could have. Some of them are very intense and very challenging. Some of them are remarkably life-giving, life-affirming, loving, uh, and just heart-opening in the best possible way. So there's quite a range going on. I'm very, very glad to be here, and that's me in my relatively shorter check-in. Janet or Allison, would you be willing to do your version of the short check-in?
Sure, I'll go. Um, so this has been another roller coaster week. I like my emotions they're crazy. They're up, they're down. Some of it's personal, some of it is external. I get hit by uh what I think is coming down the pike with the government. So yesterday the energy felt really dark and black, and it was very invasive and it was scary. And so I just hid out all day. I was going to go out and do stuff, and I was like, nope, I'm going to hide under a rock. So, we're just in these tumultuous times, and I'm just trying to ride the wave. And not put too much on it. If it's bad, I'll look at that, and if it's good, I'll go with that. And I think that's the only way that I can approach this right now. So that's my up to the minute check-in.
Wonderful. Allison, thank you. Sounds like you are checking out your surfing skills on a day by day basis,
Yeah, yeah.
never knowing what's
Emotional
going to be coming.
surfing.
Hmm. Thank you. Janet, would you be willing to check in briefly with us? I know you're not feeling well.
Um, yeah, I can really relate to that, Allison, because I feel like I'm doing a day by day, moment by moment. If there's things that just feel like, oh boy, it's just to kind of step away and put some distance in there. And when I come across lovely things, to meet them. Um, and I think I'm trying to cultivate a wiser place of being to handle what's going on and is going to be going on. And up here in Canada, I have this, that kind of, that little joke about how Trump's planning to annex Canada, make it into another state, was like, oh, I thought he might try to do that. And it's just, so you kind of go, okay, just breathe, just breathe. He might not find us quite so ready to roll over and lie down and play submissive puppy dog as he thinks. But anyway, so that's me, is back off and put some space between me and difficult things, and in the good and joyful things, step into that presence. So
Yeah, very good.
yeah, yeah, feeling sick is definitely puts uh, it was banner in the works. So this is it, hanging around in the house and hot water and take care of myself day.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And Allison, just so you know, I put you on mute because I was hearing something making a little sound that was a bit distracting. So please feel free to unmute yourself anytime. And Janet, thank you for checking in and for being here, even though you're not feeling well. And I can absolutely relate to the shifted state that can sometimes come along with not feeling well. And sometimes it's actually a gift and quite productive in a good way in terms of state of being shift. And sometimes it's just really hard and not so productive. Okay, so I would like to start unfolding some of the new news, the new elements that are going to be showing up immediately. And some of them are already in place in the course materials section that hopefully you found and are looking around in the Living Resilience online community space. And in that landing page, that where you first arrive in that community space, on the left-hand side, there's a big menu of all the different things, the special focus study groups, the support groups, the events, and of course the online courses. And there at, I believe it's the bottom of the list, but pretty close to it, is uh, Islands of Sanity in a Mad World. And that's the name of this course. This course, it consists of all the course materials that are there in that menu space that I was just describing. And each month uh, is shown to have a number of different elements. There'll be some consistent elements that have different content, but sort of the same theme. There's one called What We Are Up Against, which is meant to replace doom scrolling. We are not a big fan of doom scrolling here. I call it the fire hose to the face, and it's extraordinarily disempowering. So what it's meant to be is one or at the most two select elements that show a significant shift in one or more of the polycrisis items that make up the polycrisis. So it could be news or information about something about climate change, or something about species extinction, or something about financial collapse, and on and on. Obviously, the polycrisis has many facets. So there will be a very small select number of items on a particular theme. And I hope you find those useful. I only include things that drop my jaw after more than 10 years of being deep in the research and even writing the book about this polycrisis. And I am including those only because it feels like each of those items is important enough above a threshold that indicates it would be not wise to not know about this. So that if you haven't already read or listened to, or whatever the up what we are up against segments in the monthly recorded Zoom, excuse me, it's not in the month. We're in right now a monthly recorded Zoom session. What I'm saying is in the course content of each month, you will find what we are up against, and I hope you're finding those useful. There are also other types of content meant to be something of a balance. Those include beauty and the sacred and things that inspire us. And you are so welcome to submit anything, a video, a song, a dance, whatever it is that inspires you. Please send me the link, and I'd be happy to include it in the appropriate month's content. And there's also another part of the big menu of stuff we offer here in Living Resilience, and one of them is Transformed by Beauty. It's another place that you're so welcome to post what inspires you. So back to this program, this Islands of Sanity in a Mad World. And these Saturday sessions are divided into two parts, two 1-hour parts. We're recording the first part, the first session on Saturday, December 7th, which is the first Saturday in December 2024, or month 4, if you're watching the recordings. This is the first of 2 Saturdays in each month. It's the first and third Saturdays of each month that we offer these 2 1-hour sessions. Originally, what we set it up for is that the first hour would be primarily focused on the book club selection for this chunk of time. We've just come out of reading together in the first 3 months of this program, Climate Cure from Jack Adam Weber. And so we are now officially out of that book and into the next one, which I've recently chosen, called At Work in the Ruins by Dougald Hine, Hine. Dougald Hine, At Work in the Ruins. And I would recommend, if you're ongoingly engaged with this program, and even if you're not, I highly recommend reading his book. I'm about to play you a short clip from his appearance at a European eco-village gathering earlier this year. And I've got to say, the first thing I saw Dougald Hine speaking about his book a few months ago. It was a different setting. It wasn't nearly as alive and lively, and I just wasn't getting it, and I felt discouraged, and I didn't go out and get the book. Thank goodness, one of our participants here in Living Resilience let me know that they had an exceptional experience in a recent video they had seen, and they got the book and they are loving it and so on. So I dived in, and now you're going to get, just a little tiny flavor of Dougald Hine. And what I think you're going to find is he is a remarkably calming and yet inspiring presence. And I might remind you, you may or may not have been aware of some of the early pioneers in writing or in video production or in on public talks, writing books, people who really blazed the trails into collapse awareness and collapse acceptance. And I consider Dougald Hine one of those people. He, with his then writing buddy, Paul Kingsnorth, drafted the Dark Mountain Manifesto. For some people, that'll be what? What the heck is that? And for many, that you will have read that perhaps years ago. I believe it was 15 years ago, but I'm not certain. It was more than 10. So you will hear him speak in a way that really obviously informs his writing as well. And it is so woven together with a realism about what's going on, and yet also a poetry and a lovely humanness to his scale, how he speaks, what he speaks of, what seems to have his heart. So I invite you to just kind of sit back in this brief introduction, this first few minutes of this video of Dougald Hine speaking about his book. And hi, Sumitra. Hi, good to see you. So yeah, I'm just going to be a little bit repetitive here for Sumitra's benefit. We're about to watch just a few minutes of the author of this section of our course, the author of the book we're going to be reading together, which is called At Work in the Ruins by Dougald Hine. And I'm asking that we just kind of drink in his presence and actually drink in the presence of this lovely gathering as well. You'll see some people doing some very unusual movement stuff while he's speaking, and I find that enchanting. And then you'll hear the the crowd reaction to some of the things he's saying. And I also just find that so enlivening, and I miss it. I haven't been to a public gathering like that, at scale, especially with alternative ways of relating and being so obviously on display. It's just enchanting in that way. So you know my soft spot for that. So again, this is just a brief introduction to Dougald Hine and his state of being, his presence, his writing. And Sumitra, I just mentioned as well, Dougald Hine might be a familiar voice, or excuse me, a name to you, if you go back to as far as the Dark Mountain Manifesto. If that's familiar title of an essay, it's extraordinary. And I will be including that link in the show notes for this video and the recording, but you can also just write that down. You can't miss it on the internet. It's easy to find. But I will be including the copy that I've made. I put it into a list of manifestos and important critical writing in the history of collapse that is available to us as a resource here in Living Resilience. So I'm just breathing to make sure I've said everything I wanted to say about Dougald Hine for the moment, and I have. So if you would be so kind, I'm about to share screen with you. It'll just be Dougald Hine and his presentation on the video. Please give me a thumbs up if you both see it and hear it. And I'll be able to see your little thumbs up and so on. And if you can't, go, What's going on? Okay.
I'm a storyteller, and I believe that stories have consequences. We should be careful with what stories we tell. I'm a storyteller who comes from Europe, and we're here at the Gen Europe gathering. And nearly 400 years ago in Europe, there was a man who told a story that went like this: I think, therefore I am. Sometimes stories are like spells. That story put a spell on the world. Part of that spell was that it said that all of the stuff that matters happens up here. One of the things I like about coming to these gatherings is that I know I'm in a space where I don't have to do work of getting people out of their heads and into the rest of them showing up in the room in the way I do at some of the places where I speak. There's another story that was told more recently by an Argentinian thinker called Walter Mignolo. He said, I think where I am. Whatever I say, whatever thoughts, ideas, stories I put into the world, they come from somewhere. He said, but because of that story that René Descartes put on the world 400 years ago, there have been a few countries in the world where it's been possible for people to speak not from where they are, but as if they were speaking from everywhere and nowhere. And those few countries, the few languages, like the one that I'm speaking to you now in, have put a spell on the world, and we're dealing with the consequences of that spell. And it seems to me that part of my work, coming from England, the country that birthed the Industrial Revolution, having made my life in Sweden, the country which in the 20th century thought of itself as the world's most modern country whose pride in its own centrality is such that it can award Nobel Prizes where a group of Swedes sit in judgment over the literature of every language in the world and give out a prize each year. Part of my work is to speak from these places, knowing that I speak from where I am, not from everywhere and nowhere. Listening to all of the other voices speaking from other places, from other experiences that have been hidden from me because of the life that I've had. So it's in that spirit that I come, and I want to share some stories with you today. And most of these stories do come from Europe. And many of these stories come from places where people are still living under the spell that René Descartes put on the world 400 years ago. But I hope that together we'll use these stories to make an invitation, even maybe a challenge, for the work that you, some of you, can be a part of in the times around and ahead of us. And it starts with a story that I heard in the words of an Italian philosopher, Federico Campagna. I met Federico in London last year, and I told him what I thought I had heard between the lines of his words, because the way I tell it is not the way he tells it. And he smiled and he said, yes, you got it. What I heard was this: sometimes you are born into the ending of a world. This is a thing that happens. It has happened to others before you, in other times and places. Probably your ancestors were responsible for some of those earlier endings. But maybe this time the ending is coming to you. How do you tell, how do you notice that you were born into the ending of a world? Well, one sign of it is that the future no longer works. Because the future in the ordinary sense that we speak of the future in our societies involves a line that's drawn from the recent past through the present and on outwards in a trajectory of promise. And if you're at the end of a world, that no longer rings true. when politicians stand up and make speeches and try to mobilize people by talking about the future, it rings hollow. Because the ending of a world is the ending of a story. There isn't much of that story left. And maybe in such a time you notice that the politicians who are able to speak to many ordinary people within our societies no longer speak about the future, they speak about the past. They speak about making things great again. They speak about taking back control. And however much we rightly mistrust those politicians, the power in that kind of language reflects a truth of being at the end of the story of the world that we were born into. So Federico Campagna says, what's worth doing if it is your discernment that you were born into the ending of a world? He says, well, first, stop worrying about needing to make sense according to the logic of the world that is ending. And then, make good ruins. Because when worlds end, they don't just disappear. They don't vanish without trace. They leave ruins. Ruins are the fragments of what that world thought was real, what it thought mattered, the structures that it built. And so in a time of endings, part of the work is to break open those structures, to release the resources that are held within them so that they can be put to use to build something else. And I look around this room and I feel like I'm in the company of people who are fairly at ease with not worrying about making sense according to the logic of the world that is ending. Also, that some of you know exactly how hard it is to be navigating in the space between the world that is ending and the things that you're working to bring into being. And I'm here because I spend a lot of my time in very different spaces to this, with different groups of people, to tell you that more and more of those people out there who would never come to a gathering like this are arriving at the place where they need your help. They need your help to stop worrying about making sense according to the logic of the world that is ending, which includes finding practical solutions that help people escape from the need to make their lives make sense to that world in order to survive. And they need your help in breaking loose resources from within those existing systems to make good ruins, to make the fragments out of which we will build together worlds that we can't imagine yet. When I started writing this book at work in the ruins, I found myself going back to something I'd written 15 years ago, when Paul Kingsnorth and I wrote the Dark Mountain Manifesto. The line that people keep quoting back to me from it, right at the end, where we say, the end of the world as we know it is not the end of the world full stop. The end of the world as we know it is not the end of the world full stop. And it seems to me now that it's become increasingly urgent to help people understand that. Because if we can't tell the difference, if people who are making decisions, if people who are talking about climate change and the trouble we're in, can't tell the difference between the world as some of us have known it around here lately and the world in its largest sense, then what's going to happen is that in the name of saving the world, by which they mean the world as some of us have known it around here lately, more and more desperate acts will be taken.
Okay. Dougald Hine, one of the authors of the Dark Mountain Manifesto. I'm curious if we could spend the other half of this session exploring a few elements, really starting with whatever your authentic reflection is off of Dougald's message and what you're present to in your own system. And perhaps more importantly, what I believe we're going to do in the second hour is hopefully dissect that a little bit, go a little deeper dive into how each of us has determined our own orientation to stepping into this future. How do you do it? Where do you look? Um, so that's previews of coming attractions. For the moment, I'd be very curious. I am very curious what your experience of this just first nibble on his work at work in the ruins and what he was sharing in order to start to bring it to life a bit for the folks at that festival. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to that?
Well, I absolutely love that he has an answer for the insanity. He says one sentence, sometimes you are being born into the ending of the world. That's incredible. And it made me feel better because this is ridiculous. And I woke up yesterday morning and the first thought I had was, did I sign up for this? And so it is a cycle. We're in a cycle. It's really nice when a writer can say something that concise
Mhm.
and that you absorb it immediately. So that's very helpful. Does it make me feel better daily? I don't know, but if I could remind myself
Right.
that it's very clear that things are just going to blow up. So but when you name something and it's obvious, I think that's extremely helpful
Mhm.
moving forward. Then doesn't improve your life, but at least you can remind yourself that you're not losing your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, Allison, thank you.
I'll go. I actually have this book on audio, and it it's wonderful to listen. He reads it himself. I have it through Audible, and to listen to him read his own words is um, comforting and alarming, and steadying um, in a sense of, yeah, things are bad, things are falling apart, they're going to keep falling apart. And when there's things happen now, I kind of go, oh, there's another little piece of cement falling off, the world of modernity. And yeah, we'll be talking more about how we manage this. And I think that so far, the thing that I've found to do is to try and center myself in kindness. So if I go somewhere, like I go to the store, I try to have a mini conversation with the cashier that's friendly and affirming in some way. Just like someone opens the door, you say thank you. Just trying to put something better into the world without any sense that I'm going to change what's coming. So uh, that's me for now. But yes, on Audible or however you might get his audiobook, it's awesome to hear him reading it. You get a nuance that I don't know if I would get from like reading it myself. So anyway, back to drinking my hot water and keeping my throat working.
Right, thank you.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. Um, when he started talking, my reaction was woo, just like yes. I just felt oh, he was just talking from somewhere very alive and very deep. And I love that he said that we speak from everywhere and nowhere or something like that. And I love that he said, I just lost my train of thought. That yeah, that we're just we're just up here.
Mhm.
Um, and that's it's very problematic actually, and that nothing's going to make sense anymore. And that just felt really kind of grounding to hear. We can stop trying to make sense of it. Um, I like that. I just felt I don't know, he just some that what he was saying was very, very, very alive. And I'm all about it. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen many people have that kind of energy when they're speaking. That was just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the manifesto. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. It's quite remarkable.
Huh.
Yeah. And it's
Maybe I'll
gone
check
on
it
to
out.
become kind of a writer's enclave that where
Hmm.
they've invited people from all over the world who were first riveted by the Dark Mountain essay, the
Huh.
manifesto. And so if you go to their website and you go to where it's posted in their world,
Yeah.
you'll see just its own
Okay.
kind of fire hose of just a lot of content now. Because in
Okay.
these years, a lot of people have contributed other essays and other kinds of work and so on. There's a lot of beauty, and for me personally, it is yet another part of the fire hose. I'm in a time
Um,
of shrinking the amount of
yeah.
content that I expose myself to in every domain, even
Right.
things that are so beautiful. But I invite you to go explore to your heart's content. There's a lot of beauty there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I feel just on that note, I will say
Hmm.
I feel right now it's time that the only thing for me to do is mostly be very quiet
Mhm.
and still. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, I have a very similar thing going on. One thing I didn't really say at all in my check-in, which it's far really too large to put any vivid detail into, but you're present to me in my first public appearance after really a life-changing event has gone on for me, and I'm moved now just sharing it with you because I haven't shared it with anyone else yet. And I will be happy to give you, I don't mean to keep it mysterious, but I don't want to go into detail right now in this particular recording and so on, but I'd be happy to sit in circle with y'all and share because it's the real deal for me at the deepest scale perhaps of any event in my life. And the stillness that the stillness you talk about, Sumitra, I don't know if it's the same, but it's it sure rings similar. The stillness is the only place where I can really feel and yeah, where I can feel the truth of the moment. I don't know if that's communicating well for you, but that's really what I need right now. I have a zero bullshit tolerance at the moment and also a zero fire hose quotient. It just has to be extraordinarily select trickle. So thank you for hearing that and thank you for inspiring me to share with that, Sumitra, just by your mention of your own practice of stillness right now. Thank you. Um, so I'm noticing I'm going to do for the sake of any of y'all who haven't been around me much, I'm not meaning to make this performative, and I don't do these pause and describe moments for you to think better of me or something. I want to just offer you some of my inner workings because it's a pretty good example of some of the things that I'm inviting you to participate in terms of when I throw around the word practices in this work. So I'm just now, after having that brief exchange with Sumitra and then sharing with you what I just shared about this big event recently, and now it's back. When I slow down my speaking and I slow down my breathing, I even closed my eyes for a few moments there to just limit the amount of input and output. There was just this natural upwelling, which is now very, very familiar in my system. And I can see a couple of y'all with your own eyes closed, and I love that you might be following in your way, whatever your system is cued to do as I'm telling you about mine. So I just had a very big wave of what could be called coherence here. I feel so heard and held right now. And I had no idea how much I needed that experience. I need to feel held right now. And I do. So it has been really good that I slowed down to tell you about this inner shifting. That could be called one aspect of a number of different practices. When I use the word practices here in Living Resilience, this is a practice-based work. It is embodied work. It is soul-based work. And I, too, adore his words, Dougald's words about this is not about I think therefore I am. It is not from our heads. This is relationship-based. This is context-based. This is our connection with the web of life, moment by moment based. And it's also a reconnection to center, to our own embodied center. And all these things, if they sound unusual or unfamiliar, or if you say it differently, um, these will become very familiar parts of the neighborhood, if you will, here in this work. So in the next 15 minutes here or so of this, the first session of 2 today, I'd like to ask us to just consider for a moment some of the last words he said. Whew. Yeah, I'm just getting another wave of, what he says. I, I think it was Allison who was saying, in his writer's way of just saying it so concisely, that it's very much my experience that this world will be like Paul Chafurka and his stages of awareness says. The vast majority of the world will not come to an awareness of collapse or an awareness of the cruelty energetically that's woven into every layer of this planet and the culture. And he says there's still a calling, and he invited us. These are not his words, but this is what I heard. And he is inviting us to keep our eyes out for people who are newly awakening to some of these things that you and I are taking for granted in these sessions and in this work. And that the calling could be to make ourselves available. And I don't know what words he used, but I could say as navigators or as space holders or as folks who are willing to share about our own experience for folks who are new and struggling with trying to get the first layers digested. So, in preparation for any of that, if that's real for you, great. And if it's not, if you have a different role that is showing up for you in these times, I look forward to hearing each of our responses to what he was suggesting, and we will get there in later sessions. But today, I would like to ask for us to spend a few moments sharing each of us what matters most to you. What matters most? So I'm asking this because it's pointedly the kind of the first step along those intermediate level stages of awareness from Paul Chafurka that I very much intend to keep offering an expanding menu of practices or resources that could help us expand our capacity to be present in the face of larger and larger stressors. And the only way I know to start that process is to start with exploring and perhaps sharing what matters most to you. And I invite you also, because it's kind of a difficult question for me to answer, because I keep thinking, my God, that's such a huge question. How do I share that? And I would ask that you please just share it as a living document or a living statement that can shift and grow and morph and express differently for each of us, depending on the moment and the setting and the state that we're in at any given moment. Is there anybody who would like to share the first layer of how you might respond to that question? What matters most to you?
Can give it a shot. I can at least start one layer of it.
Beautiful.
Well, I guess, you know, the answer used to be all just flat community. That used to be my first part, my first thing. I'm not sure if that's absolutely true anymore. I think it's there. I think it's in the top three. Um, I would say the top three are community, you know, nature. I feel a responsibility to nature, but the first one I think right now is the one that's calling me and the most compelling is for me not to split off from myself. And that sounds really selfish and it feels kind of really self-centered to me. But that is what's taking up most of my energy and my practice is, and this whole situation and this increasingly um, devastating situation is really, really calling me really deep, 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 and to not split off, um, and actually repair. And so I'm trying to use the situation to repair that split in myself. When I get terrified or anger or grief, mostly terror right now, I'm trying to do that work of just being present, being in acceptance, and holding a loving container for myself. And I dedicate that work to all beings. And so that is what's most important to me.
Hmm.
I'll pass.
Yeah, beautiful. I would so love, well, I'm hoping that we all will revisit this particular topic and this question and this inquiry for ourselves time and time again and explore the different layers. I would invite you to consider if you're not already a journal person, which I really am not, but I have become kind of reluctantly, I've become a journal person. I can't imagine a more important question to have at the opening of my journal. I've set aside about 20 pages for the ongoing, evolving, and growing response to that question, that inquiry. If that sounds like a good thing to do, please join me in that practice. And if it's not your style or not your preference, please don't. So, um, Allison or Janet?
I can go. I think what matters most to me right now is the fate of the non-human world as our world, the human world, sort of crumbles. I imagine there's going to be lots of desperation, and um, I don't know how much of it will survive our thrashing around. Um, and so that is sort of sits front and center for me, is the beings that have no control and no agency and are totally vulnerable to what we do or don't do. And um, yeah, um, yeah. And so I think that that's where the presencing wants to be, which is to, got lots of snow here, and I have horses, and I was trudging up to the barn last night and through all this lovely mounded fluffy snow. My dogs and I have this little trail, and it was falling down, and you kind of go, I don't usually like snow that much, because to me it starts to feel like work. But then I look at it with different eyes and go, it's so beautiful. And the air has this quality of a suspended magic.
Hmm.
And so anyway, so that's where I'm at the moment. So
Suspended magic. Thank you.
I take it you know what I mean.
I don't know what you mean, but it's rolling through me like this extraordinary waft of the most enchanting scent of possibility. And
Yes.
yeah, oof, beautiful. Allison, would you like to share?
That's a loaded question. So I want to say that uh different chapters of my life, right, have had different answers to that question. So, but you're asking it in real time. So I'm going to have to be honest. So, I've been absolutely annihilated by having my life blown up. And I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm in trauma mode, and I went to a therapist yesterday, and when you tell your story, they reflect back to you what you're going through. And I mean, I don't want to trivialize it, but because the trauma was so big for me, maybe staying alive might be what's most important, because if anything else happens to me, if there's one more thing, I don't have much left. Okay, that's my emotional state. My intellectual state is different. What's most important to me is helping as many people as I can. I do that by virtue of what I do as a job, and that anchors me and gives me purpose. And I feel that what I've been through, I can express to other humans and maybe get them to take a deeper dive into what we're doing to the planet and where this is all going, and to wake them up. So ultimately, my goal would be to bring spirituality to as many people as I can touch with my work, because we're all going to need to help each other. And, we got 2 months left, and we can't pretend that this isn't coming down the pike. So like I said, there's two aspects. There's me, my fragile, broken spirit, and then there's my warrior drive to be serving humanity.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't want to presume, Allison, but it seems like what you just described in your own experience and your direction seems like it's a hand in glove fit with what Dougald Hine was suggesting we might set ourselves up for, to be of service to other people as they wake up. Seems like you're like right there.
That's all I have.
Hmm.
And through this trauma, I couldn't find it. I didn't know if I lost it.
Yeah.
And that scared me. But it's surfacing again, and I'm back in the saddle, and
Yeah.
so as long as I'm on the planet, I'm going to do that.
Yes. Well, bless your heart.
You know, every day is challenging, and we're all facing this monumental event that's looming over us. And I am curious. I want to see how this plays out.
Yeah. All right. Well, my thanks to each of you for this first layer of hopefully a lifelong exploration of what matters most to you. It's just lovely to hear from each of our voices about that. And I noticed that I did not do that. I did not
Yes.
respond to the query. And so if I may just start us out in the next session with a brief version of that. And then, so this is how it works. If you haven't been here before doing this, we are at the end of the first hour-long session. We're now going to take approximately a 30-minute break. We'll come back and restart at Pacific time. That would be at 10:30 in the morning. What it basically a 30 minutes from now, or at the bottom of the hour, as they say. So please take care of yourself. Eat, drink, pee, whatever whatever you need to do. And I look forward to seeing you all in approximately 30 minutes. Does there anybody have any questions before we're going to hang up? You're going to come back to the same link? Any questions? Any last minute anythings?
I think I'm gonna come back, but I have to leave. I'm going to Seattle today, so I'm gonna have to leave early. But
Uh-huh.
I will come back because I want to hear what's most important to you, Dean.
Okay.
And I'm about to stay till 10:30. I mean, 11, maybe close to 11, but we got to leave at 11. So
Okay. I got it.
okay.
All right, everybody. Have a great break.